Hey everybody, welcome back. And now this is lesson number 3 of starting your consultancy. This is like super exciting stuff. And I really hope that you get that trigger, to go and take all of this, rewatch it as many times as you want, and get the passion to get this consultancy up and running for you. You're going to have everything in this overview micro course to go and do your own research and get yourself moving in that direction. It's super exciting. So if you're at this point, thanks for staying with me. There's going to be a lot of people who buy this course that don't even get this far. So give yourself a good clap and acknowledgement for staying through. And that's really showing a commitment that you're working towards what you want in your life, which is awesome. So in this lesson, I'm going to be talking about something that you were hoping for or was wondering about in your consultancy, and that's your pricing and your contractual positions. Okay, so both are important. Now, the first thing that I really want you to get your head around is get out of employee mode. Can't be stressing this enough, right? Because you're not a QS anymore. You're a business owner. And with that comes that need, as we spoke about in earlier modules and lessons, to have your mindset just shift a little bit. Quite a bit, actually. Okay? And the reason I'm saying that is, I don't know everyone who's going to watch this. I wish I could get to know you all in like more detail. But as employees, we don't get to experience all of the things that are going to bother someone who owns a business, because it's so much more than just arriving at an office, doing your job, and returning home. And then once a month, once a week, whatever your payment cycle is, you get paid. That money goes into your bank. You don't really even have to think about anything, right? Other than just getting to the office at the time that you're supposed to be there and removing yourself from the office at the time you're supposed to leave, right? So your mindset's going to need to shift now, because you're responsible for the whole heap of things that go on in the background in a business that you may not have even thought about before now. But now is the time that you're going to have to think about it, unfortunately or fortunately. So establishing your pricing structures and your strategies, essentially as a one-person business, this is very, very simple. Okay, how much are you going to charge? Now, you're a QS, so you can work out based on your salary and how many hours you're contracted to work, what your hourly rate is. That's not your selling price, right? You're going to go broke pretty quick. If you work out, I don't know, you do the calculation and you've worked out that you earn, £50 or $50 an hour. I don't know what it is. For some it's going to be more, for some it's going to be less, but let's just say 50. Well, you may as well stay employed if you only want £50 an hour, £50 an hour, right? Because if you stay employed, then there's no risk to you. The only risk is that at some point you might lose your job. But quite frankly, being a QS, that shouldn't take you too much longer to go and find something else to do, because in most countries, they're still a scarce commodity. Now, goes back a little bit to what I was talking about in the previous lesson with your market research and your market analysis. What are other people charging in your area? You don't really want to be significantly less than them on the basis that, hey, I'm a new business and I'll work for you for $45 an hour because I need to prove myself. Now, there is science to marketing with that approach, but it also has disadvantages in that people see you as desperate, and when they see you as desperate, they imagine a lower quality service. Psychology, nothing more, nothing less. So again, we'll talk in marketing about the best way to entice new customers. But giving stuff away for free or discounting your services is not necessarily the best way to start. Okay. Now, it's hard to start because starting anything from scratch is hard, but over time it becomes a lot easier. So you need to research what people are charging in your location. And like, this is super simple. Like, you might think, well, no one's going to tell me the rate. Well, no, they're not. But you can do other investigative means, and you can soon determine what the going rate. You know, you can call a local contractor. What do you pay for a QS? Well, it's a simple conversation. They'll either engage in a conversation that becomes a marketing opportunity for you to pitch, your service, or they'll tell you to bugger off, right? So, just keep phoning around until you can find an answer that you believe is correct. Right? Don't be fluffed around with it. So I know in my area, and I also work worldwide, so I do a lot of business in the Middle East, for example, and I know what the rate is. I know what the rate is according to the type of company, even to that level of detail. Like, if I'm going to phone this company, I probably won't, because I know that they will only pay X. But I'll call this company because I know that they're paying Y. I know that because I do my market research, and you have to do the same. And charge what you are worth in the market. This is like so important, okay? But it's not going to be the same level that you're at as an employee. You need to have that as a yardstick. If you've never done that calculation, do it. Okay, it's quite simple. How many hours do you work per week? Times it by 52, and then knock off whatever holidays you have. If you get 4 weeks, then just knock 4 weeks off, and then divide it by the number of hours, and you'll get a rough parameter. It's not an exact science, but it's a rough parameter of what you're being paid for your time. Right? The employers will have other on costs on top of that. That's not the cost to them totally, but what they're paying you is part of the equation, because that's what you get in your bank account every payment cycle, right? So you need to be aiming to, in my opinion, and it's up to you how you really set your prices according to your local market, but you have to have in your mind to double that amount of money, okay, as a start. Now, if you're working in a place of extreme competition, and your market analysis shows you that the maximum that you should be charging is 75%, rather than doubling, to 100%. So in other words, you're factoring your current, instead of 1.1, you're doing it like by half that amount, if that makes sense. Then so be it. But equally, if your market analysis tells you that you not only double it, but you double it plus some, then so be it. You have to go with what the market is willing to pay. Okay, and that's how you set your pricing. You also have to consider what level you're at. When I take people into the main program for Start Your Own Consultancy, I have a criteria of, you shouldn't really be wanting or you shouldn't be doing this unless you've got 7 years post-qualification experience. So at the end of the day, everyone's an adult. You're entitled to do whatever you want. There's no law that says you have to have. It's just my criteria, because I think that's at the level where you are now not of a threat to a client through your own ignorance. And that's why I say I only personally in the main program work with people at least 7 years experience. But my point is, you need to price according to your experience. So if you've got less experience, if you're watching this micro course and you've only got 2 years experience, don't set the bar at someone with 20 years experience, because that's not good business. And people will soon start to see through it. and you'll lose business because you're not being honest about your own level of experience and what you can deliver to a company in terms of value. Okay, so just really bear that in mind. Now, once you've thought about your rate, you're going to have a concept called proposals, right? So when you're going for a job that is out there in the market, or you're doing marketing and someone says, well, send me a proposal, you need to be able to write one. So a proposal is simply, if it's job specific and you're in competition with other QSs, you follow the criteria of the person that is asking the proposal. They will detail what they specifically want from you. Okay, so you normally need to demonstrate your experience to do that particular function, whatever that function is. You generally have to provide all your legal documents, whether you're insured, and copies of your insurances, and all this type of thing, and more particularly your experience and previous projects. Now, this is where it becomes a little bit difficult because you're just starting out as a consultant, but there's no problem with putting the experience that you've obtained by working as an employee, provided you specifically disclaim that this is not work executed under your consultancy watch. It's executed as part of your experience, okay? Because the last thing that you want to be doing is, let's, for example, you're working for contractor Y, and contractor Y has done 50 jobs and they're all valued at 1.25 million, and then you come in as consultant X and you say, well, I've done 50 jobs at 1.25 million. You're leveraging off of someone else's experience to make your consultancy look better than it actually is. That's not good, and you shouldn't be doing that. But you can, without a shadow of a doubt, say, hey, look, my consultancy is just getting started, but I'm going to document all my experience because I'm running my consultancy now, and this is what I've achieved. I've done 50 jobs at 1.25 million whilst working with contractor Y. Because that's your experience. You're not lying. It's the truth. It's how you document it and sell it is the most important part. So always be honest in that regard, but put every bit of experience in there. Now, if you're that's if you're going for a job where the client is inviting other people and they have a prescribed proposal. As a person starting out, a one-person business starting out, most of the time you're going to be on the phone or going through, social media, and you're going to be asking people for the opportunity of work. Now, that then becomes, they're probably just going to say, well, send me some details. They might say, send me a proposal, but most of the time it's just going to be, oh, can you send me an email with some details? So that's still much the same. You want to outline in as much detail as possible, like what you do, how you do it, what experience you've had, how you're formed, copies of all your insurances, all of that, and send it away. Together, by the way, with how you expect to be paid for the job. Okay, so it's just really a summary of who you are, what you've achieved. This is why you should consider hiring me, right? It's your sales letter, essentially. All right, so now, when, I won't say if, because that would assume this is all a waste of time, but when you get your first job, you then need to think about your terms and conditions. Now, depending on your location, there would generally be like an institute or some kind of higher form that you're a member of in your profession. So like worldwide, the RICS is generally the international recognized institute or institution for quantity surveyors. Right here in New Zealand, we also have the New Zealand Institute of Quantity Surveyors, and I know there's lots of other countries around the world that have their own institute or institutions, depending on what they're called in a specific country. They would generally have available a like terms and conditions or small contracts, minor contracts for quantity surveyors. So that's your first point of call, right? Is to leverage off of a document that is applicable to you in your country. So, I mean, you know, here in New Zealand, I use the NZIQS client agreement form. If I'm working in the Middle East, I have my own form, but that's because I've been in business a long time. And in certain other countries in the world that I work with, I have differing terms. And in some of the hybrid businesses that are related to QSs but are more specific, like my complex advisory, I have separate terms and conditions. But that's when you're more advanced. When you're starting off, you need to keep it simple, and I would just go to your go-to institute or institution. If you're not a member, quite frankly, by starting your own consultancy practice, you need to go and get joined up to whatever entity applies in your country, because you know, it's a branding thing, which we're going to come on to, and it also lets external people know that you're serious about what you're doing, that you choose to be a member of a local or national or international organization. Okay, so your contract would come from them. If you don't have any options in that regard, then probably go and speak to a lawyer and get them to recommend some basic terms and conditions. But you really do not want to be entering into any contractual relationship with a client without some form of T&Cs, okay, because it just set the rules, particularly around payment. And, you know, it's the easiest thing. You get excited when you're first starting out and you miss all the paperwork and you get into problems, and then someone doesn't pay you and you have just a ball ache with it. So get it right from day one. And if you don't have the ability to leverage from an institution, then go and just speak to a lawyer locally and get some basic T&Cs, or go online and get some that are applicable for QSs by looking at, you know, like an RRCS form or something like that. Just check copyright. Don't infringe any copyright. But generally speaking, you know, you should be able to find the answer and put it in place. Now, invoicing and payment management. Right, this is like the boring side of managing a consultancy, but it's also the exciting part, because this is where you're going to see that suddenly the world changes from being an employee to a business owner, in that some of those invoices are going to start to be large and they're going to start to be frequent, and you're going to hopefully start getting excited to see bigger paychecks coming in your way. And that's the whole reason why we start our own consultancy, to be to improve ourselves and to put ourselves leveraged into more of a position of power. So again, going back to what we spoke about before, we were looking at we were looking at accountants, leverage off of them. If not, use a subscription service like Xero or MYOB or whatever is applicable in your country, and use a system online through the cloud that you can issue invoices and track how they're paid, when they're paid, and just make your life simple. Don't start doing them on Excel spreadsheets. That's just like, you know, a disaster waiting to happen. You need something like a cloud-based service. We'll talk about that in the module of software that you need. And yeah, just really make sure that that's all in place. So with that said, I am going to wrap this one up. Hopefully you're getting some value out of this, and I will see you in the next one. The next one will be the final lesson in this module, and it will be a little bit shorter, but it will wrap up this whole module on starting your consultancy. And I think it's probably given you some food for thought, because maybe you didn't think it was as in-depth as this. But this is still part of the foundational components, so a lot more to come. See you in the next one.